Hello, everybody. This is G, and you're listening to the SITREP Modern Wargaming Podcast. And this is our Memorial Day special edition episode. This will be our final episode before we take our summer break and get ready for the next season of the SITREP Podcast. And with us today, I have Ralph from England.
Hey, folks.
And Jim from sunny Florida.
Hello, everybody.
And this is G again, and I'm Colin. I'm in Chicagoland, and we actually had some sun for about an hour, and then it clouded up again. So today, at the time of this recording, is Memorial Day here in the United States. This is one of the 3 military-related holidays that we have. We have Armed Forces Day, which is a day that we appreciate everybody who's serving currently. We have Memorial Day, which is our national holiday in observance of those who have given their lives in the service of our country in the military. And then we have Veterans Day in November, which I believe in the UK and some parts of Europe is also known as Remembrance Day. And that is the day we observe anybody who has served in the military in the service of this country. So today is a very solemn day here in the United States as we remember those who did not make it home. But on a more cheerful note, we're going to talk a little bit about wargaming today and some hobbying, and we have a couple recommendations for gaming systems for you as well. So, Ralph, why don't you start us off with some hobby? What have you been up to or what you got done?
Oh, well, I finished my Spetsnaz.
Awesome.
So all 12 of my, what I've called is Wolf Unit, which I'm giving them a narrative name, and I'm going to write a little bit of fluff possibly about them and stuff. So they're all fully complete based, painted. They just need to be lacquered with some Vallejo sealant on them over the top of, give them a couple of coats of that, and they're done. I dug out the M113 that I'd picked up from Empress, mounted my Spectre turret to it, and inside the turret put a DKSH in it, so it's my Insurgent transport that's primed in black ready. And I built my T14 today from Empress as well, which is an impressive piece of resin.
Is it?
Oh yes, it's a very, very heavy piece of resin, but that's the modern Russian battle tank to go with the Tiger I've got. So the next thing I think be painting for my Spetsnaz will be the Tiger. So nice. That'll get done, and then onto the T14, and then I can start on my Insurgents, because I went through my collection of Spectre minis to see how many members of the Op4 I've got, and I've got quite a few packs of a mountain of lead in there, so that needs to be based and primed, ready to start painting. So
excellent.
I've got an ongoing project or two.
It sounds like it. Do you have any plans during our break?
Try to do as little as possible. That's not going to happen. No, I'll fit some hobby in amongst doing other things, because work's starting to heat up and stuff. So
yeah,
things will get done. I'll have things done, but it's going to be probably doing the Tiger and the T14 first, and trying out the new AK Interactive paint sets I got from them. I picked up, because I've got the AK Dual Book Modern Finish Figures Camouflage, which is like a guide on painting 1/35th scale. It's the example, but it's using the AK paint range. And in the back of the book, well, not on the back of the book, but the back section of camouflage is black. So it's like the things that you would see SWAT units wearing. Yeah. And the paint set they recommended was the AK Interactive Panzer set. They do a set for painting Panzer troopers. So the tank set, so it's different colours of, of basically a gradient of a black-blue base. So there's the instructions on that, and they do zenithing on their priming for the figure that they've got as an example. And now I've never done any zenithing before. I think I may try that. But I may do it with the SAS Urban Spectre that they did, the Close Assault set with the gas masks.
Yeah.
So I might dig one of them to try doing a zenith priming, and prime it with the blacks from dark to light to see what it looks like. Maybe.
Gotcha.
Maybe. But I've also got my Baba Yaga to paint, so,
Oh, did you get your new one, your replacement?
Yes, I got my replacement Spectre. They're very nice, and I got a replacement with my last Spectre order, and I've made a Spectre order this week just to top up my Insurgents. So I've got the recoilless rifle on the stand coming.
Yeah.
The sniper and something else as well. I can't remember.
Awesome.
So they'll be for my Insurgents, and then waiting to see if War Bases in the UK, they're releasing Bin Laden's compound. So as MDF, which I'll be interested in seeing the price on that because they're releasing the whole compound in MDF. So that'll be an interesting one to pick up.
Cool. All right. How about you, Jim?
No time for hobby, I'm afraid. When is there ever?
Right.
We have been doing some, well, that's actually not entirely true. It depends on what you define as hobby. We have been doing some pretty interesting live games lately. We've had a couple of good games of Darkstar. We've had some more on the modern warfare sort of a vein. We've had our first playtest of Naval Command, our first couple playtests of the Naval Command system by Rory Crabb. Oh, yeah, we can talk more about that later as far as whether or not it's recommended or not.
Yeah.
The jury's still out on that one. Air War C21. We've had some additional games at Air War C21 live on stream. The games didn't go perfectly, but that was not the system's fault. That was mostly my fault. But the game nevertheless went pretty well. We did some recreations of opening air sea campaign, actually air, land, and sea engagements of the Falklands War. With bombardment of the Port Stanley Airport and so on and so forth. We've been doing a lot of work in our old reliable standby, Valor and Victory. I know I'm always talking about that game, but that's because it's so utilitarian. It's so malleable. It's so expandable. You can use it for just about anything. It really is a useful tool. Most recently, I've been building a British army and an Argentinian army for Valor and Victory. Specifically for the British, we're talking about Royal Marine Commandos. And yesterday, at the time of this recording, we had a live demo game on our Twitch channel where we actually put some counters on the board and actually tried them out for the first time. So we're continuing to expand the swath of history and military operations that Valor and Victory can cover and can recreate very easily for players on the battletop, on the tabletop. We have had now it's going to be 2 Saturdays ago, so 8 days ago as of this recording, an absolute monster of a Panzer Blitz game with community members Bruce Lee and Damon and myself. And that was probably the most fun I've had at a gaming table since, I can't even remember, since probably that Valley of Tears game we did also Twitch on live stream with Damon. It's just, that game, the Panzer Blitz system, turns 50 years old this year, and it's still the king of games. No other war game comes close to it. Full stop, roll the credits. We're getting ready for some projects going forward. So we've got one more episode of the Ops Center to do for the Falklands, and then we're going to be taking a nice long break from that in conjunction with our normal, summer break or whatever. In which we're going to be covering ground operations. So that kind of dovetails into what we've been doing with Valor and Victory, British and Argentinians. Again, we have British Marine Commandos pretty much worked up in that system now. I'm going to go ahead and shift over now. I'm going to try and do probably some Paras so that we can do some of the more famous engagements.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's about, where certain units of the British military, was in the Falklands. I mean, you can't have, for just, super quick example, out of thin air, you can't just grab, like Darwin or Goose Green and have, Royal Marine Commandos there. That was a para battle. So we're going to have, some para counters to put in those battles. Then you've got the Two Sisters battle that took place later in the war. Conversely, that's the opposite. You've got, you can't put Paras there. You have to have Royal Marine Commandos there. There's also Scots Guards, Welsh Guards, at least the ones that got off of HMS Glamorgan in time. And you've even got, I think it's 7th Gurkha Rifles involved there. And of course, they have their own kit, their own uniforms. You know, the rules system is going to be all the same, but the artwork on the counters is going to be different. So we got a little bit more Photoshop work in our future to build all these new maps and new armies and new counters and everything else like that. And that's going to take us through the end of Op Center Episode 8. In the second campaign, so to speak, of Op Center. We did the Arabic Relay Wars. Now we're going to wrap up the Falklands and see where we go from there.
Excellent. I didn't know Gurkhas were involved in the Falklands.
Yeah, I don't know how much action they actually got into, but they did get there. They're part of like the third wave of troops that were landed. So the first big unit is I can't remember the name of the brigade. I think it's the third. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. The third commando brigade, that's going to be Paras and Royal Marine Commandos. Then comes the fifth Special Forces, the fifth Army Brigade. That's where you have the guards. So you've got, like I said, Scots Guards and Welsh. And then after that, there's some additional Army troops, including Gurkhas, that get put in there. I think they were in some of the battles, the firefights wrapping up right toward June. But yes, they definitely were there.
Awesome. So what are your plans for your off time, for your break? I know you got some D-Day stuff coming, right?
There really isn't really going to be an off time or a break because these Op Center episodes require at least a month of lead time. So a month off means that's give me a little bit of breathing room to kind of get the next big series started. We have more than a few candidates as far as what that's going to be. We've got some requests on YouTube and on Tabletop, and there's some other things that either I want to do or I feel I could easily do because of miniatures and armies and game systems I already have, here in the house. So it would be, relatively easy to kind of pivot into them. So there's going to be a few candidates there. That's going to be part of it, part of the break. We're doing a lot more Panzerleader coming up. We might be doing some, believe it or not, some post-apocalyptic gaming. We're going to see how my friend Andrew, that's Bruce Lee on the tabletop community, does at UK Games Expo. He's going there with part of the On Tabletop support militia, so to speak. He's going to try and get some FaceTime with some of the people from Steve Jackson Games. These are the people that came out with the game that we're talking about. Basically, he's really fired up for an old classic from the 1980s, Car Wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's a deep cut. That's going way back.
Oh yes.
So we literally we weren't recording this, but we were in a web conference. We tore apart our closets right there in real time. We're like, where is this thing? Do we still have it? Sure enough, I found this old book that hasn't been opened in literally 30 years. I had to go into my closet with a fedora and a bullwhip, but I did get it. I did successfully dodge the giant rolling ball that came out after me, so we're all good.
Excellent.
Yeah, we found these old rule books. We've got some. Now it's just whether or not we can make it compatible with web play. Basically, whether or not we can create everything. Oh man, are you guys getting some interference?
Yeah, somebody got their cell phone next to their mic.
That is not me.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I got distracted there. Yeah, so we're going to see whether or not we can bring Car Wars into the web environment, whether we can play it the way we play Darkstar and Panzerleader and things like that. The jury's kind of still out on that one. We're going to see how well Bruce Lee does at a UK Games Expo, whether or not this new second edition of Car Wars is any smoother or simpler than the original Car Wars, which was fun, but not the most user-friendly game in all the world,
Yeah.
Some of the movement rules were very, very granular, very detailed. We're going to see if we can simplify that a little bit, come out with some new maps. That's going to be part of it. Darkstar Wave 2 is almost ready for release, and that's going to introduce 4 new factions. They're not really new factions. They're just the 4 factions I couldn't squeeze into the original book.
Sure.
But we have 4 more factions coming out, another 20 ship classes for those factions, and another 10 classes of warship for the 6 factions that were already rolled out earlier.
Yeah.
So by the time these 2 releases are done, we're going to have a total of 10 factions and 30 plus, something like 65 warship classes that people can play. So we're definitely gonna expand that universe there. And then for the D-Day boot camp, or I should say for the D-Day 75th anniversary, while the boot camp's in progress, I was a little, I don't want to say distressed, but I did notice in some of the vlogs where they said that they weren't doing any of the actual beach tables. That is totally understandable, because I have done beach tables in the past. They are doable, but those are easily the hardest tables I've ever done. Beach tables are no laughing matter. Mm-hmm. To do a beach table right is really, really hard. They're even harder than a real life urban board, complete with sewers and inside of buildings and rooftops and stairwells and everything else like that. Especially the beaches like Gold Beach and Omaha Beach, where you have those big bluffs and cuts and everything else like that. The other smoother beaches, that's going to be Utah, Juneau, and Sword, will be a little easier, because they don't have those big bluffs behind the beaches, but the famous ones, Gold and Omaha, are really tough. I have pulled it off in the past, but certainly not on any kind of a boot camp standard. So I can imagine where the guys would not want to build, 12 of those tables. That would just be impossible.
Sure, yeah.
But what we're going to do in Panzerleader is we are going to do live during that weekend, during one of our streams, a recreation in Panzerleader of one of the two British beaches. We haven't quite made up our mind yet whether or not we're doing Sword or whether or not we're doing Gold. My personal vote is for Gold. Gold is tougher. You also have tougher German units there. So we'll see what we do. We're not going to do the whole beach. Some people might remember, some of the older community members might remember, we did all of Juneau Beach. That's the big Canadian beach in Panzerleader, literally the entire thing. And the game took a couple days and all about 12 hours of gameplay, but we did get through it. We won't be trying that again for either Gold or Sword, but we're going to be doing at least a little slice of it, maybe one battalion landing sector of one of those two beaches, and we'll see how we do. We do have some opponents lined up for that. Some people have requested it, and we're going to be some people like myself who can't get to that boot camp, unfortunately, and we're going to have our own little small gaming event that weekend. To commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Overlord landings. And that's pretty much going to take me through the summer. One more thing that's going to take me through the later part of the summer is I have been approached by my friend Piotr, that's Yavasa on the website, who lives in Poland. And we are going to start looking at Panzerleader and perhaps Valor and Victory, but most definitely Panzerleader. In never mind the 75th anniversaries, we are going to do the September 1st German invasion of Poland.
Oh, wow.
We're going to get started on the 80th anniversaries for World War II right off the bat. So September 1st, 2019 will mark the 80th anniversary of the very first day of World War II. We have a lot of primary sources on that. We have Yavasu, who lives very close to some of the battlefields. We have a lot of pretty serious people who are really interested in that part of the war. It's often overlooked, which we're going to try and fix. Whether how widely published that's going to be remains to be seen. We're going to see what we can come up with as far as coordination with other teams. But that's definitely something that we want to do. That's going to require a lot of research, more maps to draw, more counters to build, and stuff like that, taking me through the later part of the summer. But that's pretty much my summer for 2019, already kind of laid out.
Wow, that's quite a bit. Where's the break?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's see. Hobby-wise for me, I completed the Mena guy on the live stream the other night. I completed the Russian Federation soldier from Ultra Combat Modern from Dish Dash Publishing, and I started working on the uniforms for the Spectre Razor crew. I'm following the how-to do multicam on their site, so I'm going to follow that and see how it turns out. I'm going to do that step by step.
That's how I did the Russians, actually. I used multicam on them, and I used the Spectre guide.
Yeah? How did it
I know
work
it's
out
not.
for you?
I know it's
good,
it's fine. Yeah, they look good. I mean, they're tabletop ready, and that's what I wanted, something to go on the table that represents the Force. Not to look like they've been painted for competition like what Stephen does on the Spectre website, because that stuff's amazing. The same as Andy's stuff, as well, Andy's Axe stuff. So
yeah,
I'm not that standard, but I'm happy with what came out. So I used their guide, and their guide works really well.
It just goes back to my theory about painting. if you're happy with it, then it's perfectly fine. You know, you
Yeah.
can't judge yourself by how others paint and show off. If you like what you have, and if you don't, you just practice, and you'll definitely get better. The more you do it, the better you will get. So, but yeah, that's what I've been working on. Other than that, not too much. You know, I have school I'm trying to finish up and some other things, but that's what I've been working on. I've been following along, you know, watching Jim create his counters for Valor and Victory. It's just amazing. Jim, you need to start your own game company. Seriously.
It's been brought up before.
Yeah, I mean, you know, let alone Dark Star. You know, I think you could really be successful in that, business. So, but other than that, I backed a Kickstarter, and I honestly do not remember what it's for. It was a new game that's coming out. Where's Kickstarter?
That's the first sign that you have a problem.
It is. It is truly.
Admitting you have a problem is the first step.
I mean, it's that bad when you do not remember what you're backing.
I secured door this week and purchased the Alien RPG.
Yeah. So, okay, this is not technically modern, but it is my favorite era of gaming in military history outside of modern. And this is called Victoria Cross Deluxe Edition 2, and it's the Battle of Rorke's Drift in Islandwana.
I saw that one.
And it is kind of hex encounter-ish. I guess this was the first game that the company ever published, and that's Worthington Publishing. So I backed that one, and then I backed another one called, what was that one called? Custer's Last Stand. So,
there you go.
Yeah, a couple, traditional board game type games. There hasn't been too much on the modern aspect recently. So, as far as hobby, that's pretty much been my hobby for right now. How about a little bit of news? There hasn't been much news-wise. It's been kind of a quiet week or two, but there's been a couple little blips. Ralph, did you want to talk about one or two?
There's been a lot. Empress have been putting out some pictures of their Vietnam sets that they've been doing.
And they look really good, Jim. You should see
for the Battle of Hue stuff, the 28mm Battle of Hue.
Yeah.
Really nice miniatures. I mean, it's Empress. Empress do some really, really stunning minis anyway. Their moderns are really good, and the Vietnam set's really good. I was thinking about getting a collection of the Marine ones. Just to paint up and have a play with painting them up in things.
Have you guys seen? I can't remember the name of he probably told me what the company was, but I can't remember. Volley Fire Andy on the On Tabletop site has a single figure painted. I don't know if it's the ones he might be the ones you're talking about, Ralph, but he has a 28mm U.S. Marine Vietnam figure on there. And number one, Volley Fire Andy did a fantastic job on the paint. But even beneath that, you can tell that, holy crap, this miniature is awesome. I almost want to log on the site now and see if he mentions what that company was.
Because Andy Zach's been posting his up.
Volley Fire?
No, they're Empress, the ones that he's been posting up.
No, the Volley Fire was the name of the community member. Let me see if it says the name of the company.
Because I think it's Empress as well, have been doing custom heads on a couple of them, and I think they're releasing them, and one is going to be Private Joker. And the other one is, who was Joker's
Rafterman.
companion?
Rafterman. Rafterman was his companion. Was the photographer.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the guy he went to Hue with? It's Hue.
Yeah.
The guy he went to Hue with, or the guy that he met there from boot camp? That was Cowboy.
No, it was Cowboy. It's Joker and Cowboy that they're doing as two minis by the looks of it for their sets as well. And then you've got Green Go 40 as well. Have just put out a load of US Marines.
Yeah, I was trying to share the picture on Skype here so Jim could see it.
The Green Go 40 ones are quite nice as well because they've got the sniper team, which looks really nice.
Yeah, let me see if I can. I don't know if you can see that, Jim, but.
There we go.
So those are the USMC from Vietnam. Those look really good.
Yeah, that's the Green Go 40 stuff, and that's as close as the Empress ones are just as good as that, as well.
Yeah, I mean those
So-
look. I mean, look at this guy. He's got a law.
Oops.
So, yeah, those look pretty good. The old flak jackets, the steel pots.
There seems to be a lot of impetus about getting 28mm Vietnam minis out. So
Yeah.
it looks like that's the next, should we say, next big thing in moderns, possibly.
Well, it's almost like a cycle because if you remember, back in the 80s, Vietnam was big. You had
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket, you had Platoon, you had what was that TV show?
Hamburger Hill,
Yeah,
Tour
Hamburger
of Duty
Hill.
was the TV
Yeah.
series.
So, I mean, there was all this Vietnam stuff. It was like a 20-year cycle. So, I don't know what their resurgence is. But, I mean, I think it's just an untapped area for wargaming. And so they said, why not? There's another little company I've never heard of, Lancaster Games, producing SGMM, modern U.S., Afghan, and Vietnam 20 mil. They posted a picture of some 20 mil U.S. Special Forces for Vietnam. I'm assuming this is a first attempt. Take a look at them, form an opinion yourself. I'm going to leave it at that. So, if that's something you're looking for,
I was looking back at the site, and Volley Fire Andy was painting. Yeah, it was one of the ones you guys were talking about. A Gringo 40, 28mm Vietnam War range. And his photos, I'm looking at his finished 28mm painted up. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from his paint job. His paint job is astounding. But underneath the paint job, and he even says this in his post, the quality of the miniature. All right, G. I'm looking at the final, painted image. The M16 does not have the forward assist on the bolt carrier group. It has the old M16, the original M16 plastic handguards.
Yeah.
It has that 3-pronged flash suppressor. I mean, you can tell it's a Vietnam era M16 down to whether or not there's a forward assist on the bolt carrier group. I mean,
wow.
The original. This is all in 28mm. It has the old 20 round box magazine, which I guess that would be pretty easy to do. You can tell exactly where the flag checking ends and the regular utility blouse begins. It's a really fantastic miniature. You can see the folds and the canvas of the canteen cover.
Yeah, you can.
It's actually really the little stabs for those two wings kind of flap over the top of your canteen cover. It's an amazing little miniature, and of course, you did a great job painting it and basing it. But those Gringo 48s, or I'm sorry, those Gringo 40 28mm, just from what I've seen in photographs, look really, really good.
Yeah, I just looked up the page, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the other thing as well that dropped a week ago was Spectre put out a picture, which I've just linked to it, from their Instagram of the possibly, how they did the kill team. They did the set of 5 Middle Eastern, what they called was the kill team. So it was the guys with the AKs. They're doing what looks like a kill team support mini coming, which is the new green that Stephen that they put out on their Instagram, and it looks quite a nice mini.
Nice.
As well. So they're churning bits out. And then they posted as well a collection of hard hats.
Hard hats?
Yes, in 28mm.
Why hard hats?
No idea. I'm wondering if they're going to be a collection of objective minis and like oil workers and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Like hard hats you can put on miniatures, or just
No,
hard
these
hats like
would be-
sitting on the ground?
I'm not sure. They were just 28mm sculpted hard hats.
Yeah, it's
That's
literally
different.
3 hard hats sculpted. So it's a teaser, obviously, to something. So
Yeah.
excellent.
Hard hat miniatures or hard hat heads.
Just a hat.
Just a hat. Yeah.
Yep.
Just a hat.
I'm just saying, like a hard hat that you can put on one of your guys, or if they have to replace the whole head with wearing a hard hat, that might be useful. I mean, you got like some engineering project out in the Amazon that gets attacked or something, or like you were saying, oil rig workers. But just like the hat sitting on the ground, I don't know what you're going to do with that. That's kind of strange.
Well, we'll have to see what happens.
because further down on Instagram, you've got the objective stuff that they had. So you've got the nuke or the warhead in cases, and one of the other ones I think that was there that they've shown is a pile of money, which I think was to go with the Blacksite miniature or the Blacksite Studios bank that they did.
Like a big 1980s style pallet of money, like shrink wrapped.
Yeah.
Oh, I could see Pablo Escobar now.
There you go.
So Spectre are churning out their bits. I know it's been quiet, but they have had a rule set, I think, coming out, haven't they? And I think that's eaten up a lot of that time.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's change gears. If you remember from our last episode, I gave you all homework assignments. And who would like to go first? Ralph, you had video game. Jim, you had classic / boardish war game, and I had miniatures. So, Ralph, why don't you go ahead and kick it off for us?
Well, I mean, you said really what it was as an entry into modern gaming on PC or console. I mean, the obvious one for everybody if they've never played it, and it is a modern game, but it's a game on rails, as it's called, I would class it as, is the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare or Modern Warfare 4. Sorry, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, as it was called. The remastered edition came out last year, I think it was, when the last Call of Duty game came out.
Okay.
They just churned them out, and that's just your typical first-person shooter, but it was the very first Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, that was it. Call of Duty 3 Modern Warfare, sorry, I'll get it right. Confused. That was the first Call of Duty that had gone from, because the original two were World War II. And that was the first game that I can remember of that ilk that had went straight into doing modern conflict. It's got the famous mission, which everybody loves, and I must admit I do love playing through it when you get to it, is as a sniper. You are an SAS sniper working with one of the other characters or your things, and you're crawling and wearing a ghillie suit, and you're having to sneak through Chernobyl.
Okay.
Where there's going to be an arms buy in sort of Chernobyl after a long time after the reactor went down. So that's an easy entry game. Yeah, you know. You can
so
pick
what
it up
makes it an entry game?
The controlling. I would say the controls, because it is just a typical first-person shooter. So it's mouse, keyboard, gun, fire. You know, there's nothing intrinsically difficult with the mechanics. You know, you basically it's run and gun. For things that are a little bit more in depth, I would say you're looking at Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Okay.
Because of the mechanics behind it. It's still a little bit of a run and gun, done in a third person or first person. But then you have teammates you can control, or can join you in the game as being other players.
Yeah.
You've also got skills, so you've got equipment to use, so things like the drone and some stuff like that. Sync shot, which you would use as a single player, where you can use the drone to mark. And depending on how many skill points you put into it, depends on how many enemies you can mark. Up to 3, plus your own shot, that's 4. So when you fire the shot, the other 3 fire. So it's a way of taking down enemies synchronized as you would, you know, through comms and stuff like that. And the map, compared to, say, Call of Duty, because it's an open world environment, you can go anywhere and everywhere within the Bolivian environment that they've created, compared to, say, Call of Duty, which is you are on a rail, you are moving forward, you can't really divert left and right when you are, you know, in that environment. And the other thing about Wildlands, which is quite good, is they've incorporated content from some of the other modern games. So the first mission they did, there's what's called DLC or downloadable content, was your special forces unit can kill the Predator. So you engage with the Predator.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. The second mission they did was you as the team leader or get a mission from your CIA handler, and there's another character there with her, and it's Sam Fisher from the Splinter Cell series of games that Ubisoft did. So they've incorporated Sam Fisher. They've incorporated some Rainbow Six Siege characters in there. And the last DLC they've done is another ghost turns up called Cole Wade. I could be wrong. I haven't installed it. I just saw the things. Just saw some YouTube footage of it, and it's voiced and acted by John Berthnell, who went and played the Punisher. But that's the villain of the new Ghost Recon game, which is coming out in October, which is Ghost Recon. Gotta look it up. Can't remember it. That's terrible, isn't it? Ghost Recon Breakpoint is what it is. So the new Ghost Recon has been announced, and there's a load of footage up there. People can go and have a look at it if they're interested. The new game's called Breakpoint, and the character that you meet in this current DLC for Wildlands is the villain for the next one. So they're tying their games together, and that's a little bit more in depth. I would say Wildlands is a bit like The Division, where they're a little bit more in depth in their gameplay and their mechanics compared to something like a first-person shooter.
Okay.
So that would be my humble recommendations.
Perfect. All right, Jim, you're up.
Okay, if I remember the conditions of the question correctly, it was come up with a game in not so much your genre, but in your type of game, or medium of game, I guess. Miniatures, video game, board game, strategy game, hex and counter game, or whatever.
Right. That
would be a good entry point for someone who might be, familiar with a hobby, but not familiar with that exact, medium of game.
Correct.
So, okay, you're a war gamer. You've been playing, Flames of War and Bolt Action and Infinity and 40K and who knows what else. And you're tired of listening to Ariskany Babylon about hex and counter games, so please, I'll try one just to shut them up, okay? Okay, so here's my recommendation, and it's going to come as no big surprise. No, it's not Panzer Leader. Panzer Leader is not entry level, okay? And Panzer Leader, when it came out in 1969, 1970, was tragically flawed. It does need some love out of the box. So that's not my recommendation for an entry-level hex and counter game. Entry-level hex and counter game that Ariskany recommends for people who may not have tried it is, big surprise, Valor and Victory. Okay, and there are more than a couple reasons why. Number one, it is easy and light. The rule book is 24 pages long, I think, and a lot of that is illustrations and examples and charts and things like that. So it's not a lot to read. Mm-hmm. It is just detailed enough to where we were talking about this a little bit in the stream last night. It's just detailed enough to where actual tactics that are used on the battlefield, infantry tactics, it's primarily an infantry game. Infantry tactics will emerge in the game naturally and organically. In other words, it's not a special rule or a stat line you have to read off of a unit card or anything clunky like that. The game literally consists of 3 numbers: an attack factor, roughly speaking, an attack factor, a range factor, and a casualty rating, which is a little like a defense factor, but not really. And that's really it. Of course, there are permutations in there and how those numbers interrelate, but there are no special abilities. This guy can do this because he's wearing a different colored uniform. That means he's in a different, level of the space-time continuum. He moves differently than everybody else. It's not. There's none of that. Okay. Here are some troops. Here are some weapons. Here's your force. Here's a tactical problem. Now you have to go out and you have to solve that tactical problem. It manages to do that without a 500-page rule book. Like I said, it's just detailed enough to have this stuff come out on its own, to where in teaching yourself not only the rules of the game, but also how to win at the game. You can explain to somebody how to play chess in about 5 minutes. To get someone to become a good chess player can take some people a lifetime. Right. So in becoming a good Valor and Victory player, you are teaching yourself, whether you realize it or not, real life infantry tactics. The next reason is its level. It's a relatively low-level game as far as, each counter on the map represents either a squad or a fire team or a single leader, NCO or officer. So it's either 4 men, 8 men, or 1 man. A hex is usually considered about 20 meters across, so a good-sized Valor and Victory map is really only about maybe 3 bolt action tables, maybe 2 Flames of War tables. So for people who are more accustomed to these other kinds of games, it's not that big of a jump. A standard, say, force in Valorant Victory only comes out to 40 to 80 men. And again, if you're used to playing Flames of War, 40 to 80 men on the table is not some gigantic, leap that's, going to boggle your brain or whatever. You're going to be able to handle it. It's, not going to be a problem. There's a great community for the game. The community is mostly on Board Game Geek, although there is also a site for the game itself that Barry Doyle has put together. That's valor-and-victory.com. You can go there and check it out, and you can see what people are coming up with. There's a ton of mods out there. People create their own armies, their own rule sets, their own expansions, their own maps. There are hundreds of maps available because everyone who can, even has like Microsoft Paint, for crying out loud, can draw their own maps. People create maps that they're going to play on Steam. I think it's getting a Steam release. If it hasn't already, it's getting it soon. People also play it on Vassal, so it's easy to get into, and it's all over the place. There's a World War I mod that some clown over on Tabletop put together. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. That same guy came out with one for Vietnam and also came out with one for 1982 Lebanon. We also tried one for 1982 Falklands just last night. There's a guy on Board Game Geek who, I'm not kidding, has come out with Valorant Victory for Mars Attacks. And it looks like a lot of fun. And he actually has good games with it. It's infinitely moddable. It's infinitely adjustable. You can have it do almost anything you want. One thing I really do want to do, and this might be another one of my summer projects, is adopting Valorant Victory for Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Stormtroopers, the 501st versus Rebel Commandos, things like that. If we remember back to the original trilogy and even some of the prequels, what we see is Star Wars ground combat is mostly dominated by infantry. Vehicles get destroyed pretty quickly in that game. I mean, Skywalker takes out one with a lightsaber. The Ewoks smash up light tanks basically with logs. So let's face it, ground vehicles and ground combat in Star Wars pretty much stink. It's mostly an infantry game, small scale, small ranges. Again, perfect for Valorant Victory, and again, infinitely moddable. And to wrap up this long-winded conversation, the number one reason Valorant Victory is a good entry game for people who may not be into this kind of game but maybe want to give it a try is its cost, is its price point. The cost for Valorant and Victory is flat $0. It costs you not 1 red cent to download the rules, download a bunch of maps. You will spend a little bit of time printing out the maps, mounting them on some kind of cardboard if that's your thing, maybe cutting out some counters. But, I mean, as far as an entry-level game for someone who's maybe not sure whether or not they like this kind of game, let's just do a little bit of realistic contingency planning here. If you're a guy that likes Bolt Action, Flames of War, Battle Group, all tactical, traditional miniature games, and you want to try hex and counter games, you go into that with the 50-50 shot that it just might not be your thing. And if it's not your thing, you can back out of the project and it has cost you literally flat broke, nothing, $0, nothing. So those are my recommendations for, I think, why Valorant Victory, might be a good game. If it's not your thing, you haven't lost anything except maybe a little bit of time.
Nice. That's an excellent recommendation. Thank you, Jim. All right, so we move on to the miniature side, and my recommendation is going to be a little different, shall we say, because the game technically isn't out yet. However, the precursor to it is out. So there is a new game from Dish Dash Publishing called Ultra Combat. The modern version will be coming out later this summer, early fall, is my understanding. But the Normandy version is currently out. And what this is a fire team to squad level game that uses card-based identifiers for your team members. And it's very simple mechanics, but not like so simple it's boring. It's just easy to play, fast play. It's made for fast play. So for those who may have not played miniature games before, this appears to be a great entry point into a miniature game. There are also much I don't want to say more complex, but there are more in-depth sets as well. Rule sets, including Dish Dash's own Skirmish Sangan, which really gets into the weeds on character creation and a lot of the nitty-gritty realism, if you will. But my recommendation right now is Ultra Combat. Will be modern, but to get your feet wet into the game, you can currently pick up Normandy, and it breaks everything down into very simple. Like you have junior NCOs and officers, and each of your squad or fire team will have their own card, which gives a spotting, a shooting, casualty, types of things like that, morale points. Everything is on a card, so everything there isn't a lot of things for you to have to remember or jot down in paperwork. It will lay out in front of you. The model count is low because it could be as small as a 4-person fire team. This is done in 28 mil. They have some really nice miniatures that are going with the Ultra Combat Modern. One of them I painted up on the live stream, the Russian Federation troop. The detail's very nice. They're a little on the beefier side, which it makes it good for beginners as well for painting, because the detail really stands out. I
think it's classed as heroic scale, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say almost a heroic scale. But the modifiers are easy. Everything's laid out in a card-based format. The rule book is very clean. We will do a review. Even though it's technically World War II, I think we're going to do a teaser review of Ultra Combat Normandy as we get closer to the release of Ultra Combat Modern, so people kind of have an idea of what to expect in some formats. You don't necessarily need the cards to play, is my understanding, but I do have the cards with the rule book. Because I think the stuff is in the rule book as well. I don't have my rule book sitting in front of me, but I believe the cards are actually printed on the pages in the back, so you do have access to the information as well. It's just nice having the actual cards. They're playing card size, just so you can lay it out on your table, when you're playing the game, so you have easy access to all the information.
Yeah, they're in the rulebook. Yeah, I've got my PDF version open here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ralph. So, easy play game. My understanding is it's got a lot of replayability. Like I said, we will definitely do a video of it at some point. Ralph, do they have miniatures for Normandy, or are they just letting you use whatever?
Use whatever you want,
modern, right? So
it's only modern that he's done it. It's use whatever you want. I mean, when I picked up Normandy, because I picked up, the same as you, I bought it. So I've got my rulebook sitting on the shelf with the cards, and I've got the PDF version. It's actually from a World War II gaming point of view. That's going to be my go-to game over Bolt Action.
Okay. And why would that be for you?
Just I prefer the rule set. I just prefer the idea of not having to mess around with ranges and stuff like that, because there's no ranges in it. Okay. It's all actual thing, and it just seems to flow better, and the force creation's a bit easier. Bolt Action, you're playing around with, I've got, say, 1,000 points, I've got this, and this, where that is just like a very simple game, is a 12-man, 600 points, 12-man fire team, and that's it. That would be a very simple starting game, and I've got a load of Bolt Action minis, and I've got some new with the Bolt Action plastics to build, and a spare Sherman. So yeah, there it is. There it goes. It just flows for me. It just flows a bit better, and I enjoyed Bolt Action when I played it. I like the dice mechanic. I think that's quite clever, but I'm not that. I want something else. I want something different. And that's why, that just appealed to me to be different. And I backed the Kickstarter like you with all the minis. So hopefully when that turns up in November, I think it is, he's looking at.
Yeah.
I think it's mid-fall, coming to Kickstarter. So it's just a shame he didn't hit the end, so we could have got the vehicles. It is Kickstarter, but we can pick the vehicles up anywhere, I think, to be honest.
Awesome. So that's my recommendation for entry levels game to get into. So as we get ready to wrap up this Memorial Day episode, I thought we would just do a little poignant moments in remembering some people from our service time. Jim, did you have one?
Like a personal one, honestly, not really.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, when I was in, I was in a non-combat MOS, as everyone knows. Never even got close to any kind of, hard work or whatever. And as a result, most of my friends and people that I knew were in either the same MOS or in, associated MOSs, so I knew a lot of MPs. I knew a lot of cooks. I knew a lot of, motor T guys. Pretty much all the guys that everyone else makes fun of, the rear with the gear guys. We did serve on our base's funeral detail. So we did 167 burials. Sometimes that got a little poignant. The rules were, at least when I was still in, this is, 25 years ago, if you had served at least 180 days and received an honorable discharge, and if you lived within 50 miles of a base that was equipped with such a team, you rated a military burial. And if somebody would, called in, says, oh, my grandfather or my uncle or whoever, has passed away. He was in, the Army in, 1942. He did, 4 years and now he's out. And then, 60 years later, he passes away. Can you come out and, help us take care of him or whatever? And, again, we didn't really do any combat fatalities there. It's mostly just people who retired a long time ago, and now they've passed away. So now we're going to help the families take care of them. But it was something that we really did take very seriously, and you could feel it on the team. A burial team is 17 men. So you've got six pallbearers, a staff NCOIC, an officer in charge. He's the guy that actually he's usually a captain. He's the guy that actually presents the next of kin with the flag. A bugler, 7 riflemen, and a chaplain. We had one Navy guy on the team. He's actually the senior man on the team. He's usually the battalion chaplain. So 17 guys, and you pile up in these vans. First of all, it's usually a Saturday or a Sunday, as luck would have it. You don't want to be there. You're in your alphas. You're sweating, like a stuck pig. It's everyone's like cracking jokes and clowning around. You're basically 18, 19, 20-year-old kids in the back of a white van driving down the road through God knows where, South Carolina or North Carolina. I mean, you're off in the sticks somewhere, and everyone's goofing off and slapping each other around and trading filthy jokes or whatever. But I tell you what, the second the van door slides open, your Marines, you start taking it very seriously. And whether or not he retired 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, whether or not he's Army, Navy, Marine Corps, who knows what, that's a fellow serviceman in that casket. And as one of the pallbearers, me and 5, other guys are the ones that actually carry his box out of the hearse to the gravesite, and we fold the flag over the casket, hand it to the OIC. OIC then presents it to the next of kin. So that's something that we took very, very seriously. And again, once everyone kind of piles back into the van, the job's done, the air conditioning's back on, you start loosening up the ties in your alphas, and everyone's, back to being, a 20-year-old Marine again, wondering when the first beer down range is going to be. But I always was somewhat struck by that mood shift. When that van door slid open, and it was, a real deal for about, 35 minutes, in an otherwise pretty casual day. But for a while there, it got really serious, and I was always, just really struck with that.
Thank you for sharing that, Jim. So I have, unfortunately, several I could talk about, but one that sticks out to my mind because he was a great influence in a part of my military career, and his name was Staff Sergeant Bill Farron. Bill was a member of the 106th Aviation Bravo Company, and when I got to Bravo Company, this was a National Guard unit here in Illinois. It was an assault helicopter unit, so we had Blackhawks, and he kind of took me under his wing. This was a Vietnam guy. He was a door gunner crew chief in Vietnam. That's where he started. So this is mid-'90s, and he got out of the Army, decided he missed it, and came back in. He was actually active guard, which means full-time. So he was a civilian tech during the week. for the National Guard, and then he had a military commitment for our weekends and deployments and drill and all that. So he was an encyclopedia of anything Army aviation. How to do your inspections on your helicopter, how to do pre-flights, just a plethora of information. So just an amazing person to know. He's a good friend. We joked around a lot at AT. We did some stupid military stuff. And I had left the unit to go off to, where did I go after that? I think I went up to the Wisconsin National Guard, to the air ambulance unit up there at that point. And they got deployed to Iraqi Freedom, and which I had just missed, which is another thing that haunts me. But anyway, while they were over there, Bill took ill and had to be evac'd out of their forward operating base back to Germany, and he passed mid-flight. So it just one of those that hit me real hard. Even though it wasn't truly combat related, he still passed in service. So every Memorial Day I think of him. I think of some of the Rangers that we took care of after a parachute jump that burned in. Burned in as a paratrooper slang for when the parachute doesn't open or doesn't open properly and they don't successfully land. They hit the ground with a lot of force. And then some SF guys that I knew. The one that really stands out, and Jim, you might remember this. I think it was before you entered service, but being that you're up on military history, you might remember this event. At Fort Bragg in '87, there was a C-130 doing a LAPS, low altitude parachute delivery system, and they were dropping out. I think it was a Sherman, if I'm not mistaken. Not a Sherman, a Sheridan. Sorry.
Right.
And it was that or a big pallet. I can't remember what the load was, but the plane came in. The C-130 came in. The chutes deployed, and I don't know if the pilot overcorrected or what happened, but the tail hit the ground, the ramp, and then the plane flipped over and went, it happened right in front of me because I was on drop zone duty that day. So you saw plane pieces, unfortunately, bodies, and it was a very traumatic event. So on Memorial Day, I always think of all those people. So it's not meant to get you all down, but we just want to make sure that we're observing this day for what it's truly for. So then when we're playing with our, as people say, toy soldiers, we can still be respectful to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. So with that, I'm going to close out the show. We definitely want to thank our Patreon supporters at the team supporter level: Anthony Watts, Lawrence Townsend. Our preferred member is Jennifer Lemon, and our producers are Dennis Cross, Dylan Asmus, JJ, and Rasmus. And we want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank Ralph and Jim, as always, for being part of the team. We are now going to go on our summer break, and we will come back to you guys in July. And until the meantime, keep the dice rolling in your favor and enjoy your summer, and we'll see you in a month or so. Take care, guys.